Welcome to Evolve to Succeed, the podcast that brings together entrepreneurs, founders, business leaders and experts to talk about their journeys and explore the link between personal and business success. I'm your host, Warren Munson, founder of Evolve, a coaching, training and development company focused on enabling business and personal success and creating a community of like-minded individuals. Whether that be through our peer groups, one-to-one coaching, our training and development programs for you and your teams, or through our content and events, our mission is to get the best out of each individual and inspire them to be better both in life and in business. If you want to learn more about Evolve, including our beautiful co-working space in Ashley Cross in Poole, then please go to evolvemembers.com, where you'll find great content, insights, details of all of our services, and also information on our forthcoming events. For now though, let's get on with the show. On this week's episode, we hear from Chris O'Connell, a leadership coach and non-exec director who built and exited a £25 million recruitment business. However, this is nowhere near even half the story. I was alerted to Chris by something he recently posted on LinkedIn regarding the effect that being a business owner with a significant growth business had had on his life and his well-being, as well as the renewed perspective he had gained since exiting his business and making some important decisions about his personal values and taking his mental health seriously. It was an incredibly honest and courageous post, and you'll hear it word for word at the beginning of our conversation. And just so you can understand the impact that that post has had, I can tell you that it's received more than 20 million views, which says it all about the significance of Chris's message. One of the main purposes of this podcast is to hear about other people's entrepreneurial journeys, both the highs and the lows. Because whether you're already a successful business owner or someone who's just starting out on your journey, I think it's really important to learn about the routes that others have taken to get where they are and the effects, both positive and negative, that being an entrepreneur can have on your life. These stories will also hopefully give you some suggestions about the emotional tools that one can develop and embrace to ensure your ambition is balanced and that your success is not just material, but deeply meaningful and all-encompassing. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello Chris, welcome to the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
Warren, thank you for having me on. Absolutely delighted.
It's great to have you on the podcast, and I think there's so many interesting avenues of conversations we could go on during the course of this podcast. But actually, how I came across you, Chris, and one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on the podcast was a recent LinkedIn post that you put up. And it's a really simple post. It shows two different photos of you, and it reads, if you don't mind, on the left, I was CEO of a £25 million business, but I was unhappy. I overworked, underslept, going through a divorce. I hated my life and my body showed it. On the right is me now, running a small outfit, working my hours around my kids, happy, healthy, divorced and loving life. What a difference a few years and some self-love can make. I'm incredibly proud of where I am today. I no longer have a £25 million recruitment business, but I've rediscovered who Chris really is. And what more could be more valuable than that? So, what a great post. Very simple, but it's a great insight to where you've been and where you're on. But tell us, Chris, a bit more about your journey that you've been on.
Yeah, I mean, that post has got 20 million views now. I think it's had 10,000 comments, 265,000 likes.
I was going to ask you about that a bit later on. Did that in itself blow you away?
It did, and it was overwhelming. The response I got from it was just an outpouring of thank yous and inspiration and, lots of different leads coming in. I mean, I'll talk about it in a bit more detail, but it's been overwhelming. But it is what it does do, that post. It does kind of summarize my journey fairly well. So yeah, I'll go back to sort of when I first started my career, actually. But there's stuff before that might be quite interesting as well. But I'll start there anyway. But I've got 25 years recruitment experience. Started out a business called the S3 Group, which is a big corporate recruiter, 3,000 or 4,000 consultants worldwide. I was a very shy, wet behind the ears, quite vulnerable young man then, in my early 20s, I think it was. But very quickly, I became the UK top biller and the worldwide top biller across the whole group. So the number one biller in the whole of the business, billing over £1 million quid a year, built teams, became a manager, director, team leader, and in 5 years made them 15 million quid and loved it and just knocked the doors off. And, I don't know if you've seen the film Boardroom, but you walk into one of these offices, there's loads of them. There's 20, offices in 20 countries, but, they've all got Ferraris and fast cars and wide ties. And I was just, for some reason, it kind of worked for me. But
you're all perceived that that's the life and that's success.
Yeah. I left there, set up my own business in 2003, got that to 100 people, £25 million turnover. 3 offices, 14 industry awards. I was Southwest Entrepreneur of the Year. We won 3 Virgin Fast Track 100 awards in a row, which is very hard to do.
Absolutely.
We're the second fastest growing recruitment company in the UK. We won 3-star best company, 3-star awards in a row. So that's all about how we engage with our people, our customers, and the culture we built was phenomenal. And it was people still say to this day it was one of the best businesses of its time. God knows where that business will be now. It would probably be Hayes or a Reed, or it'll be huge business, really built. It wasn't me, it was us. We built that business, and a great culture. But I sold that through private equity, but that transaction didn't go to plan. So I kind of lost all of it, pretty much, millions and millions. So one day I'm this sort of CEO, next day I'm watching Judge Judy. It was a huge sort of wrecking ball moment.
To sort of nothing in a moment of time.
Yeah, and it affected my mental health. I got divorced. I lost my wife. I had houses that all went. I lost access to my children, and tried to commit suicide a couple of times. Mental health problems, depression, all sorts of stuff. And took some time out of the industry because I had to. And then 5 years later, it took me that long to kind of put my head back by the power pit. I went onto LinkedIn, and one of my kind of, sort of colleagues on there, sort of peers on there, asked me to go on one of these webinars, and I could pick a subject of what I wanted. I chose vulnerability and leadership, and it went down really well. And that then pivoted me into what I'm doing now. So over the last 3 or 4 years, I've built something I'm really proud of, a really great NED and coaching business. So I'm now renowned and well referenced as a the go-to NED and coaching recruitment. So I've got a number of clients of different sizes. So I go into their businesses and coach and teach them how to grow their business, but not just operationally and figures, and we can do all that. But it starts with mission, vision, and values. And I learned how to do it because I've done it, but also how not to do it as well. So kind of I think the soft skills like vulnerability, how you communicate, and having a purpose is really important. So I'm loving that. I'm a podcast host, which has gone really, really well. I've had James Reed, the owner of James Reed, on there. I've had some professional footballers on there. So kind of like my social media has gone really well, and and I think I'm proud of that because it's I've utilised my story really to sort of pivot myself, and so for me now it's an exciting phase, and I feel happier in myself now. I'm more content than when I had the houses, the watches, the cars, the offices, and the 25 million now, because I feel like I'm on the planet and I've got a purpose and I'm having an actual impact.
What a wonderful, an incredible kind of an inspirational story. And again, so much that we could kind of focus on. But I want to start really with that. How do you picking yourself up? Because there'll be people listening to the podcast that are in that place that, may not quite be as bleak as the point you got you to, but they're running a business. They're not happy. They're not happy with their life. They, and we'll come back to the suicidal attempts and those things and some specific advice. But if somebody's in that place right now, what's the one bit of advice that you would say from the journey that you on about how you turned it around and how you picked yourself up from that level?
It wasn't like a one moment thing and it changed. I think it was probably a number of things, but probably having that time on my own really helped me. So when I left the family home and had some time to actually reflect and stop and pause, I didn't have all the trappings around me. I didn't have anything to go for, nothing to strive for. So I kind of like laid bare. So I guess that did, it made me actually look at myself and look inward and be in tune with my feelings. So what I'm trying to say is I think it's about slowing down to speed up. So I just took that time to self-reflect, do some personal development, and just absorb content and podcasts and books and readings that would nourish me and benefit me. So I think it was just a lot of self-care, a a lot of realization that actually I'm a really, really good guy, because even when I building that business, I got to 5 million, 10 million, 15, 20, 25 million. Every time I got there, it was like, okay, I never thought I was worthy enough, didn't have the self-esteem. So no matter what I did, it wouldn't satisfy
So I was
me.
going to say, there's a question, obviously, an adage, talk to our clients about it, and from a coaching perspective is, do you think you could never have answered that question, when's enough enough?
No, there was no horizon, and I didn't get any kind of necessarily get any pleasure out of that. So
Yeah.
now, like, without being too kind of spiritual, I get pleasure out of the trees. I live on the river. I'm seeing the water and stuff like that, and it's like, you know, this kind of stuff gives me pleasure. Like having a chat to you and hopefully someone listening, and so that kind of stuff is far greater of benefit to me than achieving a materialistic thing. That said, so I went from this multi-millionaire to nothing. Then I started to resent money for quite a while, and now I've got a different angle on it when I'm sort of coming back into the fore. And I think that you've got to have a good relationship with money, and it doesn't have to be the be all and end all, but I think it's important to have that as well. So
So how would you
yeah,
define a good relationship with money then? Because that's an
I think
interesting point.
a respectful one. I
Okay.
didn't respect money because I had plenty of it back then, and I could get most things what I wanted. And I kind of like I wasted it on stuff I shouldn't have wasted it on. So I think it's enjoying it, giving yourself a reward, but also you don't. I think when you get the money, it's when I got the money, it's like, what can I spend it on? What can I spend it on? It's like you don't
Yeah.
have to spend it straight away. So I think it's treating it with, it's the emotional relationship you have with it. And I think that's, it sounds a bit odd, but I think that's important to sort of get fulfillment and pleasure out of what you do, and then you get paid for that, and respecting that process as opposed to just doing it, getting the money, and then I can spend it on something.
Yeah, I suppose we've all been there times in our lives. I'm sure if you're building a business and you're successful, and you can get into that trap, isn't it? Things mean success.
Oh, all the time. I used to be like that. I used to be like, so when I get this, or when I meet this person, or when I do this, I'm going to feel this, and that's nonsense because it just doesn't happen. So it's about, again, it's about actually living in the moment. And people, that's a cheesy statement, but if you can go day to day and enjoy the process of time, you're laughing.
So, interestingly, now acting as an NED for some high growth businesses, I assume mainly in the recruitment world.
Yeah, predominantly, but actually the last year or two, I've got 3 or 4 that are outside of recruitment. So, but predominantly, yeah.
So, when you're advising those clients, and they will be hungry, perhaps young, hungry, ambitious, very driven, how do you coach them to think about things differently? Because when you are in that
Yeah,
mindset and you're
yeah.
that individual, it's hard to perhaps listen to the advice.
Yeah, it is. But I'm very open with it. I tell them about my own experience, and if I'm asked if there's one thing I could do differently, it would be work a bit smarter and utilize 10 or 15% of my time on other stuff. What I mean by that is that I feel as if that if you can spend a bit extra time or different time on your relationships or your fitness or your health, you end up being more productive in work anyway. So, but what I did was I put 99.99% of my effort, energy into work. I was a boring sod because you'd ask me, and you think, oh, all I do is talk about work, and eventually it led to burnout. So it's one of those first-hand experiences I can utilize and say, actually, why don't you focus on something for 2 hours and nail it, and then go for a 15-minute walk around the block and come back. It's that kind of stuff, and then you extenuate that out. So I think burnout is rife in recruitment and in sales and in life in general. And I think life doesn't have to be like that. I think what I like about the pandemic, I think it has changed some of the conformity, the 9 to 5, the work from home, work from anywhere. People are realizing that actually, you can work a lot smarter these days and have a balanced life.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's about perspective, isn't it? We often again talk about holistic success being that balance between personal and
Mm,
business success. And one of the things we talk about within our kind of groups in our community is right now, how would you score your business out of 10? But how would you score your personal life?
totally. 100%. Be the CEO of your business. So you can see behind me, there's this sign actually. And then there's 6 facets that I coach when I do my sort of life coaching is business, personal development, health and fitness, spirituality, relationships, and wealth. And I think I do get people to score that. And I think for example, if you're having poor relationships outside of work, that's going to affect you inside of work. If you're not looking after your health, so it's rather than just putting what people do, they put all their efforts into the business basket and they come home and they haven't really got relationships with their family or the
Well,
children.
they're zombies, aren't they? Because you are burnt out. You haven't got the time. You haven't got the energy. You haven't got the balance. You're not being present. That's my biggest trap in life, was never being present in the right moment.
Yeah, I think everyone's been guilty of that at some point.
So you also talk about sort of, your podcast is called Purpose-Led Leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you mean? Because that term purpose is bandied around quite a lot these days. So what does leadership with purpose really mean to you, Chris?
Well, I think because I didn't realize I didn't have a purpose until I didn't have a purpose. So I lost my business, and I didn't even know why I was doing that business. Now I look back and I think it's probably to prove someone wrong. So as an example, my mum abandoned me when I was 2 years old, and there's other stuff happened to me when I was a child. And it felt as if on one hand that gave me the drive, but it was almost like I was trying to prove her and other people wrong. That was kind of a wrong purpose. So I think the businesses that I coach now, I walk in there and one of the first questions I ask is, what is your vision, mission, and values? And most of them don't have a vision or mission. So what I'm trying to say with that, a lot of the leaders that I coach, they don't even know necessarily why they're doing what they're doing. And when you've got that, you're motivated and you're driven and you're fulfilled. When you haven't got that, you're going through day to day and you're getting the money, you're getting the accolades, but it doesn't mean anything. So purpose is about, for me, it's fundamental to health, to prosperity, to productivity, to fulfillment, to self-esteem, all that kind of stuff. Because you feel like, oh, actually, I'm doing something that is meaningful. And I think all too often people don't have that, and that's why there's divorces, or there's disillusionment, or there's suicides, or there's resentment, or there's negativity, because they don't even know why they're existing. And that's a pandemic in itself.
It is. And do you talk about purpose both from a personal and a business perspective, or do you always look to see that they're one and the same?
Well, I think the whole work-life balance thing is, I think, business and work and life, I think it is all one thing, actually. I do try to harmonize it. I think 5 or 10 years ago that wasn't the case, but I think be the CEO of your life. Your business shouldn't be the number one thing that's going to be your purpose. It should be part of your purpose. So for instance, if you're building a business or a recruitment company or whatever it is, you might want to be the best in your field and deliver excellent service. But why do you want to do that? Because you want to, and it's more often than not because you want to have impact on other people's lives. Why do you want to have impact on other people's lives? Or you ask the question, so why are you building this business? Oh, because I want to be financially free. Why do you want to be financially free? Because I want to spend some time with my children. Actually, so your purpose is to spend quality time with your children. It's not about the money. It's not about the awards or the size of the business. It's that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's great, and it's digging deep, isn't it,
Yeah.
and getting to the kind of real nub of it. What's interesting is, clearly with that, your kind of background and those early years of your life, and it's really interesting, isn't it? Sometimes that success that is driven by adversity or driven by pain.
100%.
And you see that in so many successful entrepreneurs and business owners, but it's not a way to exist. I agree. And now, knowing what you know and the journey that you went through, again, if somebody's listening to this and they realize that they're in a business, it's being successful, but they are driven by some adversity in their life in the early years, what would you be advising them to do now what changes would you be advising them to make so they don't get to the burnout stage? They don't do that trip that you went on?
Be open, be vulnerable. I think a great leader shows compassion and empathy, and is open. Not necessarily bear your heart on your sleeve too much, but I think be a human being. So if you've got, I think adversity is good because it can drive you forward, but it can also act as a bit of a cocoon for your emotions as well. And what people tend to do, they tend to kind of cover their emotions or their pain by forcing themselves into work, and ultimately then you hit a car crash. So I think that on one hand, embrace that adversity and use it to drive you. But my advice is, I'd prefer you to take one step back, see a therapist, see a counsellor, get it out of your system. Then you can propel forward. Because I think if you don't, you can only take it so far anyway. And it's a bit like what I did. That's exactly what I did. And I got it to that 25, 30 million quid, and I just went and I crashed. And now that's all come out of me through various different means. I feel I'm ready to. I could do anything I want to do now, because I'm not saying I'm completely cured, but I'm not the poison, but the trauma is kind of like, I'm not afraid of it now. I've embraced it and I'm ready to go. There's nothing holding me back.
So do you still think in any way, shape, or form that adversity you've been through that is still in some way, shape, or form a driver?
100%. When I say that, I'm never going to forget that. It's still going to be my fuel. If anything, it's made me what I am today. But I
Yeah.
don't resent it now. I see it as a gift, and it's a positive thing. Whereas before, it's kind of like, it's almost like, I'm going to do this because it's an angry kind of
Which,
drive.
which is what that LinkedIn post has had
Yeah,
so many views is all about, isn't it? And
yeah.
but also that being open, talking, seeking help isn't the typical alpha male kind of way of life, is it? And
No, I talk a lot about this kind of, you know, the archetypal old school dictatorial leader who doesn't show any emotion. It's
yeah,
I think going all the days where we've got an excuse around. I think the problem we've got, society kind of puts women in a box, and men, or has done recently, men in a box.
mm,
But the best leaders are the ones that, I mean, we've all got a male and female energy. Men have female
mm,
energy and women have masculine energy, all that kind of stuff. So if anything, it's a strength to show compassion. And what I like about the advent of much more social media, and everything's accessible, I think that the old school dictatorial of come in, run through a brick wall for me, mate, work hard, play hard stuff, that's changing. This generation, the millennials and this generation, that they don't want that. They're
mm,
far too savvy for that, and actually they're what's happening in the archetypal middle-aged white person, or middle-aged people. Um, they're either not capable of changing or don't know how to change. And actually, you've got people like Stephen Bartlett, young mid-20s people, outperforming people
yeah,
with double his
ripping it up.
experience, because he's got
Yeah.
the nous and he's got the creativity and he's got the openness.
So you're also part of mental health in recruitment as an initiative, so which was launched in 2020. What role do you play in that?
Yeah, I was there for a interim period. I helped with sort of the founder to promote it forward. But I'm a mental health first aider, mental health ambassador as
Yeah.
well, and actively promote mental health in the workplace. And that initiative was just to encourage people to recognize that it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to
Mm,
talk about your mental health. It's okay to have a breakdown. We've all got mental health. Every single person in this world has some form of mental health, good and bad, and it can creep up on you. So it's just trying to remove that stigma a little bit, and especially in a hardcore sales kind of environment. Back in the day, up until recently, if you ever dared to say, actually, I'm struggling, you'd be almost frog marched out of the building. Whereas now it's different. So I think it's just a catalyst to keep that going. I think.
And do you really think, that the boiler room sales kind of techniques in recruitment are dissipating and they are disappearing, or do you still think that the old school is still out there?
I think it what worked then worked then. What it doesn't work now. So
Mm,
I was part of that, as in I was involved in that, as in it worked back then. I think there are some firms that just still do it and they're not flourishing. So, but I think you need an element of it no matter what, because it's sales, right? But
yeah.
I honestly, yeah, I mean, I've been in the sector for 25 years now, and it's probably changed more in the last 2 years than it has in the last 10.
And where do you think it's going?
I think it's going to more trust and empowerment. I think KPIs there are some certain KPIs and metrics that are still important, but I feel that technology is playing a part in this as
Mm,
well. And I think where companies go wrong, they hire on skills and experience, and they fight on behaviours and attitude. But it should be look at their behaviours, attitude,
yeah.
character first. Well, not first, or as important as the other stuff. So it's becoming more the personable traits, the softer skills, and all that kind of stuff is becoming much more important.
Yeah. And does it fit the culture? Does it fit the vision? Are they going to be part of the team to
Yeah,
take you to the next place?
yeah.
And is there any, given this new world? I mean, you've mentioned Stephen Bartlett, but given on the journey you've been on, is there any leaders out there or examples of great leadership that you admire, and any case studies and any people that you think are doing it well?
Stephen Bartlett is a good example of that. I like watching Dragon's Den. I think that program is a good. I compare that to the Apprentice.
Isn't that old school v new school though?
Well,
Isn't
I was going to say, well, then you compare that to The Apprentice. I mean, I used to really enjoy The Apprentice. I look at Alan Sugar now, and I think it's with the greatest respect, he's done bloody well, but his style is not conducive to how I would run my business, where you're fired and it's all very kind of like it's all very dictatorial. So I feel that he isn't showing a good example, I have to say. But I think people like Simon Sinek, Jay Shetty, you know, they're influencers, but that, you know, they're good people. But I think that leaders can come in many forms. They don't have to be the CEO. And I think most leaders are already being led or being suppressed by bad leaders, actually.
Yeah.
So leadership can be how kind you are, or how generous you are, or how open you are, or how vulnerable you are. It doesn't have to be how successful you are. What is success? Success doesn't have to be the size of your business. It could be how happy you are.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a thing, isn't there? There's a book, Turn the Ship Around by David Marquette, and he talks about not having followers in your organization. You know,
Yes.
have leaders.
Yes.
So,
But
you know,
it's the leader's responsibility to create more leaders.
Yeah. And if you can do that, you can thrive and succeed. But given where you are now, what's your ambitions for life right now then?
It's a really good question. I think it's about impact and legacy. So what I want to do is impact as many people as possible in a positive way. So I think I'm loving my NED and coaching business. I'm looking at getting sort of equity in some of those and building a wealth creation vehicle there in terms of having some wealth. But I think it's about continuing to grow, continue to pivot, continue to enhance my skill set around coaching leaders, coaching businesses. I love all that kind of stuff. So what I get my kick out of, actually, if I can develop businesses to another stage, I think that's really exciting to me. My children are really important to me. I see them every other weekend, every Wednesday, all the holiday or half the holidays. So I'm a big family man as well. But I'd like to impart my knowledge on people as much as I can, make them feel better, and just leave people better than what they were when I first met them.
Fantastic. And how are you going to stop yourself? You know, you've got from sort of nearly, I'm going to, you know, calling for believe your own hype, because, you know, as we all grow business, and that must have been part of the issue, was that as you were growing that successful business, you were believing the hype and
Absolutely.
got trapped in that. And we've discussed that and gone that. But, you know, what checks and balances and then what methodologies, which again could be useful to somebody listening to this, will mean that you don't go into the trap of believing your own hype?
I think it's self-care, self-love, so you can care for others. I think I'll go back to a binary kind of on a day basis. I think it's starting the day right. So as an example, now in my bedroom, I've got a whiteboard in my bedroom. It's got my values on there, like courage and discipline and integrity, but it's also got affirmations in there like respect myself, respect others, be kind. So straight away when I wake up, I'm absorbing the right stuff. So I'm not sort of wasting my time on poor content. I'm not going out and getting drunk every time, all that kind of stuff. So I'm just doing the right things from the outset. In the morning, I'm doing that. I walk into the bathroom, look in the mirror, and I connect with myself, look in the eye, give myself a high five. If I start the day in the right way, do some breathing, and I feel that if someone's built a £100 million business, there's always someone that's built a 200. There's always someone that's done something bigger.
Somebody that can say something that's done something better than you. Yeah.
And it goes, So I would say it goes back to your why and your purpose. Why are you doing this? And if you don't know that, then you're in trouble. So that's how I check myself. So what I try to do is base my decisions on my values. So if
those are your personal values, you've also defined your personal values.
Okay. Yeah, that's how I check myself, really. So, and that's helped me sometimes. Whereas before, I was doing so well. I kind of made decisions and didn't necessarily care about the consequences because I thought I was a little bit untouchable, and that's a dangerous.
It's really dangerous.
The way I see it like an American football field. I think, giving an analogy, you've got two end zones. You've got the end zone where it's really dark, you're in a really, really bad place. The other end zone is when you're absolutely flying. You don't want to be in either of them, actually. You want to try and be in the 50 or the 40 to 70 yard space where when it's going really well, keep your head, enjoy it, but just say to yourself, things can turn. And when you're going really down, it doesn't have to, it's not permanent as well. It's kind of just trying to keep in that balance.
It's really difficult though, because it's an audio podcast, people can't see, but success in life and isn't a It's not a linear journey in any way, shape or form, is it?
No.
It's the ups and downs, and it's how you manage yourself actually probably as much through those highs as it is through the lows, isn't it?
I mean, I think there's a saying is, when you're in heaven, that's when the devil gets you, or something like that. When you think you're in heaven, it's like it's just one of them, and that doesn't mean that you shouldn't enjoy what you just
No.
Just be calm.
It's just where you can lose your edge a little, can't you?
This too shall pass is the saying. It's like, things come and go.
We always end the podcast, and you've really, I think, defined it just now. But just as we start to wrap up, the sort of couple of final quick fire questions is, where's your happy place?
Well, I quite like living where I live. I've got, I used to have big houses, all this kind of stuff. I've got a 2-bedroom apartment on the river, and I flipping love it. It's got 2 balconies. It's right. So every morning I wake up and I see the river. So that's like, I love my walking. I've got into my walking recently. So I like to walk 10, 12 kilometers most days around the harbour. So getting out in the fresh air is my happy place. I play a bit of football, quite like being on the football pitch. And my kids, really, as well.
Cool. And what qualities do you most admire in your new self?
I would say, I think my generosity, and I mean that in terms of the time. My empathy, I think, as well. I'm enjoying that aspect of me, and sort of trying not to judge too many people.
What hard thing are you not doing enough of right now?
I would say probably public speaking. Believe it or not,
Okay.
Podcasts I'm okay with, and I'm podcast host. But for some reason, still standing up in front of a big stage, I need to do more of that out of my comfort zone a bit more. I'm getting requests now, so I've got no choice.
Gonna have to get on and do it.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And the final question, being the Evolve to Succeed podcast, but as I said, I think you've answered this during the course of this half-hour conversation, is your personal definition of success. How do you succinctly put that?
Enjoying the passage of time, enjoying the journey on a day-to-day basis.
Brilliant, Chris. I've really enjoyed our conversation. There's so much content in that episode, in that conversation, that I think will help others. Thank you for being so honest, and being so transparent in your responses and your answers. I've loved having you as a guest on the podcast. If people want to know more about you and more about Base Mindset, where can they go?
LinkedIn's a good one. It's Chris O'Connell. I've got the 4-leaf clover after my sign. You can't really miss me. I'm on Insta as well, Facebook, but probably LinkedIn's the best.
Perfect. Thank you for being a great guest.
Thanks for being a great host.
Thank you for listening to the Evolve to Succeed podcast. My hope with every episode is that you've learned something new or heard something that challenged your way of thinking and further motivated you on your path towards becoming a more knowledgeable, informed and inspired individual and business leader. If you enjoyed this episode, then please help us by rating, reviewing and subscribing. We really value your feedback and would love to have you along for future episodes. And please don't forget to learn more about Evolve by going to evolvemembers.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.